You know, years ago, I heard somebody make a statement that made such a profound impact on my life, and this was it. They said somebody else could take the same hand you've been dealt and win. Somebody else could take the same situation, the same problems, the same obstacles that you're faced with right now, and they could succeed. And when I heard that statement, somebody else could take my situation and succeed, it dramatically opened my eyes. And here's why. When I was told that phrase, I had just been handed the position as CEO for Savelle Ministries, and at the time overseeing offices in the USA, Canada, the United Kingdom, Africa, Australia, South Africa, and Singapore. And we actually had a branch office in Botswana, so technically 8 offices. And here I was handed that huge responsibility, never been a leader in that capacity before. I have a degree in French, a minor in communication studies, and somebody said someone else could take the same hand you've been dealt and win. Well, I recently wrote a book called The Leader's Checklist, and this is basically my life in a nutshell of how I became an effective leader. I was in a place of going, what do I do? Where do I start? And you know, hearing a statement like that somebody else could take your situation and succeed, that caused me to think, well, how? What do I do? And immediately I began reading books, and one of the first phrases I ever heard was this: everything rises and falls on leadership. And I thought, everything? Are you sure everything? Then I heard this statement, and I added this in the first part of my book because it is so powerful. Listen to this. This is from John Maxwell's Developing the Leader Within You, and I quoted him in my book. He said that during a sales meeting, the manager was getting on to his staff for how dismally low their sales figures were. He said, I have had just about enough poor performance and excuses from you. He said, if you can't do the job, perhaps there's other people out there who would jump at the chance to sell the worthy products that you have the privilege to share. He said, then he pointed to a newly recruited retired pro football player. He said, hey, if a football team isn't winning, what happens? The players are replaced, right? The question hung heavy for a few seconds. The football player answered, actually, sir, if the whole team's having trouble, we usually get a new coach. Everything rises and falls on leadership. I would read stuff like that, and it would start to scare me that I had that much responsibility on me. Then I heard this story, and it was about how John Maxwell had lunch with a friend who would actually go into resorts when they were starting to fail. They were about to, go under. He would go into these resorts, and he said he would always do 2 things. Listen to this. He said whenever they came into an organization to take it over, they always started by doing 2 things. First, they trained all the staff to improve their level of customer service. And second, they fired the leader. John Maxwell said, what? You always fire him every time? He said, yep, every time. John said, you don't interview him and find out if he'd really been a good leader? He said, nope, if he'd been a good leader, the organization wouldn't be in the mess it's in. So I'm reading stuff like that, and fear is coming all over me, and I'm thinking, wait a minute. This organization's gonna succeed or fail because of me, my leadership? Then I heard T.D. Jakes say, if you have a pastor who has the capacity to lead 100 people and you give him a church of 1,000 people, he will lose 900 people. At the same time, he said if you have a pastor who has the capacity to lead 1,000 people, you give him 100 people, he will gain 900 people. Everything rises and falls on your ability to lead. So I wrote the Leader's Checklist for anyone who's desiring to be a leader, or your future involves leadership in the, coming up, or maybe you're a pastor now of a church, a youth group, a small group. Maybe you are in a network marketing team, or you have your own business. That's why I wrote this book, was what I have learned in being a leader. So the first thing was realizing that yes, you get the parking spot with your name on it, but you also get a lot of responsibility. But I put together a checklist to help you, and I wish I'd had a book like this with just a little checklist of what to go through. Because first of all, chapter 1 is all about personal growth, how I had to learn to lead myself effectively before I could lead other people. And so I established a personal growth plan for myself. And I teach the 5 things that I do every single day before I ever head off to the office. 5 things, and I've been doing those since 2002, and I haven't stopped. But you know what? When I changed my routine, it changed my whole life. When I developed discipline in me, you change your habits, you change your future. So I had to learn to develop discipline and consistency in myself. Well, then I had to build the right team around me. I wrote a whole chapter on building your dream team. And you might say, well, why is it so important that I have the right team? Well, listen to this. Those closest to the leader determine the level of success for that leader. That's pretty important. I tell my team, my success is dependent on y'all. Not totally, but you know what I mean. Machiavelli said this: the first method for estimating the intelligence of a leader is to look at the people he has around him. So it's pretty important that you have the right people surrounding you on your team. In fact, it's so important that statistics say 20% of people in an organization will be responsible for 80% of the company's success. That relates to a church, a network group, a small group. They are responsible for 80% of the success. So your 20%, the people who are closest to you, let me tell you how to identify your 20%. They are the producers, the influencers, the decision makers, the problem solvers, the highly proactive people that you already have around you. And here's the way I actually described how to identify the 20% that you need to surround yourself with. And just real quickly, I'll tell you, you make a list of every person directly around you. Already on your team or in your sphere of influence, make a list of every single person. Just list their names. And then you ask yourself this question about each person. If this person withdrew their support, what kind of impact would it have on my life? So if you wouldn't be able to function without their support, put a check next to their name. If their absence would nearly devastate your progress, put a check next to their name. If the company, the church, the team would just move perfectly fine without them, don't put a check next to their name. You will probably come up with 20% as the people who need to be on your dream team. And those are just a few little things that I talk about in the new book. And then I talk about how to expose your team to growth opportunities. I had a plan for growth, but then I had to figure out, how do I get a plan for growth for my team? Why does my team need a growth plan? Those closest to the leader determine the level of success for that leader. So I had to expose them to great books, great places, great events, great people. Sent them on field trips. I went with them to Joyce Meyer conferences. I took the sales team so they could see exhibit sales and see their displays, and do they all wear matching shirts, and how do they get people through the line fast. We went to live TV tapings at James Robinson's to see what's it like to put on a live TV taping. We chartered a bus and took the whole staff to the Get Motivated conference. My staff was exposed to people like George W. Bush, Rudy Giuliani. They got to hear Zig Ziglar before he passed away. What was I doing? Exposing my team to growth, because growing employees make growing companies. So these are just some hints and things that we talk about in the book. One of them is on how to set yearly goals so that your team gets excited about accomplishing a worthy goal. So there's all kinds of tips in here: how to establish a financial plan, how to stay focused on that plan, how to teach your team to be problem solvers, all kinds of good information, and I'm telling you, it's extremely practical. And let me close out with a quote from Vince Lombardi. He said, "Leaders are made, they are not born. And they are made just like anything else has ever been made in this country, by hard work." But you know what? We can do this. Trust me, if Legally Blonde can learn how to lead, you can too. So I want you to get my new book, The Leader's Checklist, and I believe it's going to give you the tools you need, the tips you need to take your leadership to a whole new level. And remember, everything rises and falls on leadership. If you're enjoying these podcasts, please subscribe to this channel. You can follow me on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, so I can keep you motivated to go after your dreams. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next week.
Make plans now to join with women from all over the world for 2 days that can change the story of your life. Icing 2014, Once Upon a Time. Experience something unforgettable with amazing worship, fun-filled activities, new friendships, and life application teaching from Terri and her guest, Nancy Alcorn.
To heal broken hearts, to proclaim liberty and freedom to the captives. We want to say, Jesus, please set so-and-so free. But the truth is, we need to get up in their face and say, Jesus already set you free.
Everything is up to your ability to dream, to imagine, and to stay focused on those dreams.
Grab a cupcake and join us for Icing 2014, October 24th and 25th at the Fort Worth Convention Center in Fort Worth, Texas. For more information and to register for this free event, visit terri.com today.